everyone from Traklife Media. I am Aiden Schwartz, also known as Full Blown, and today I'm joined by none other than Stephen Babcock. Babcock is an indie folk singer-songwriter hailing from Buffalo, New York. His style is truly unique and innovative while still appealing to a wide variety of indie singer-songwriter fans. Outside of creating and performing music, Babcock is a diehard Buffalo Bills fan and a beer connoisseur. But today I'm joined with Stephen to discuss his recent and upcoming singles, as well as an album on the way and a tour within the next few months.
Yep.
So Stephen, off the bat, I got to ask, with like such incredible, intricate details in your lyrics and incredible performance instrumentally, can you walk me through what your songwriting process is like?
Totally. As far as the songwriting process, it's kind of different every time, but I think for the most part, it always starts. I usually sit down with the acoustic guitar first, and I'm a big John Mayer fan. When I first started writing songs and playing songs, and I remember he always said that, you know, you should, if you can play a song on the acoustic guitar, it can pretty much translate to anything. And so I've taken that to heart. And when I write music, since I'm a guitar player, I always sit down with the acoustic guitar first. And then I kind of go from there. Once I get the chords and the structure together, that's when I'll sit down and start writing lyrics. And it helps me get the rhythm together as well. Just mainly too, because I originally started playing music as a drummer. And so for me, music is so rhythmically locked in that lyrically, I kind of need the rhythm and then the chords from the guitar to kind of get the melody and the lyrics together. So long story short, starts with the acoustic guitar, carries over into the lyric writing section, and kind of gets tightened up rhythmically as I go. And then lo and behold, you know, after, I don't know, usually I write a song in about 30 minutes to an hour. They're usually done and ready to go. I say that it takes about 30 minutes to an hour, but oftentimes they're songs that I've been sitting on for months and months and months, and they just finally get completed in, 30 minutes or so. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you're like, when you're into it, when you have such a direction, it seems to come naturally, and usually going with the natural route yields the best results. Now, you named John Mayer as an influence, but I hear like a lot of different influences in your sound. And what's really interesting about that is it all yields something so unique. You don't say, I don't name one artist. I don't name John Mayer as the person that I say like, oh, he sounds like John Mayer. So I see a lot of different influences. Can you talk to me about, what has bred your sound?
It's a lot of, I think as a kid, it starts with, John Mayer. I think the first CD, I stole that CD, Room for Squares, from my older brother. He had it like it was like one of the first, he bought it at like a Barnes and Noble when we were, I'm from upstate New York originally. And so he bought it at this Barnes and Noble and he brought it home. And then I just remember taking it from his bedroom as a kid and just listening to it like on repeat. That was a super big inspiration for me initially. I think as I've gotten older, I've really fallen into this kind of mixture of both like Americana music, which is like very on brand for a guy who plays the acoustic guitar and has a beard. But at the same time, it's also, I really love bands like Dayglow, and I love 1975. And for me, what I draw the most inspiration from is just really good writing, whatever that means. It doesn't necessarily have to be specific as far as sonically or like a specific style, but I really am drawn to songwriters. That's like my huge inspiration, because I think for me, lyrics are so important. So I obviously love Mayer, but I also really love artists like Julia Michaels, who's like a songwriter who has been super involved in LA and actually all over the country, but in the world, I guess, at this point, but super involved in that. I've really been into like Shawn Mendes and Charlie Puth a lot lately. Even though I there's so much, I'm 29, there's so much younger than me. It's just that writing is really inspirational, like lyrically and kind of the pop stuff. So it kind of it goes the whole gambit. But for me, inspirationally, if there's really good lyrics and they're really good writing and melody, then that's what draws me. It doesn't really matter the genre, but I'm kind of into that. That's where I like fall into.
Believe me, it shows in your music. I mean, I'm blown away by just your ability to work a pen. And you're saying you start with a guitar, but what yields the content of your lyrics? Because you have songs like Bukowski that like paint such vivid stories. Are you going in and you hear a melody that you're playing on guitar or a chord progression, and then that points you into direction lyrically? Or are you going in with the intention of, I want to talk about this today, I'm going to use writing as a means of therapy maybe, or what strikes a chord with the lyrics?
Sure. I think that is more of a bit of both. I know, like I was saying earlier, when I write a song, it really starts with the guitar and kind of goes from there. For me, it could be either or. Like sometimes I'll sit down and I'll play the guitar and the chords will kind of dictate the tone of the song, right? So if I'm writing a song that sounds sad, I'm probably not going to make a super upbeat lyrically sounding song. But at the same time, that's not always the case. Sometimes I might sit down and say, I really want to write a song about a story, kind of like Bukowski, which is kind of an amalgamation of different stories that are both autobiographical and not, but to create this kind of palette and kind of storyline, I'll sit down and know that I want to go that direction. And so then it's kind of, it dictates the guitar, but that is truly like a toss up. It's a bit of both, really. I'm not, it's not one or the other, but I think what's important for me is just making sure that whatever direction I go, I tend to really like lean into that. So if I'm really going to tell a story, I really want to tell a story. If I really just want to make a pop song and make something that feels upbeat and like energizing and fun for a listener, I want to lean into that. That just it just depends on what happens when I sit down and start playing around.
Yeah, it's all kind of natural. And it seems to me like, you have a lot of involvement. I mean, you have the upcoming single with Molly Parton. I'm excited to talk to you about that. But I wanted to know, with the people that you work with directly, like, a band or producers and engineers, what involvement do they have creatively? And talk to me about, working with the people that you work with.
Yeah. So for the most part, I write all the songs on my own. I've done some co-writing and some stuff like that, but for the most part, I do all the writing. And then I've been really involved lately, especially in the last year or so, with this guy named William Hinson, who's another singer-songwriter, performer, and artist he's really amazing. He's out of North Carolina. And he has kind of produced all of the songs I've been working on recently. And his involvement is super important in just kind of setting the tone and keeping things together. And for a while, I was writing music and just kind of producing it myself or producing with some friends or guys in my kind of like live band situation. When I play live a lot, I'll play a lot acoustically just on my own, but sometimes I'll play with a band, and those guys are really great. And sometimes they were involved in the kind of the recording a little bit. But I really knew that after I went in quarantine and knew I was going to put out new material, I was like really, really on the hunt to try to find a producer of some kind. Doesn't matter who it is or per se, or, I wasn't like, oh, I need to work with some, $5,000 an hour producer in LA. I just wanted to work with somebody who really understood what I was going for. And I stumbled into meeting William right before the pandemic at a couple of So Far Sound shows. We were both playing them at the same time. So we just kind of became friends and buddies, and we were talking, and he was like, listen, I'd love to work with you. And we just kind of hit it off from there. So as far as collaborators, over my career, it's varied. As far as the writing, I do pretty much all the writing on those songs. There's maybe a few that are out that are co-written, but for the most part, I've written the songs. And recently the production has come really from William Hinson putting his hand in and kind of adding this element his element's very different than mine. He's a much more pop leaning artist. So that helps bring out these poppy things that I just want to do, but don't necessarily have like the skill set offhand to know. And I've gotten better at that, but he's been super helpful in making that possible.
And how that all comes together, that's what really has been like mind blowing for me listening to your music, because you really have that indie folk singer songwriter edge while maintaining the pop appeal. And hear songs that kind of lean towards pop sometimes performed in 3/4, like you have your songs like what is it, Willow Trees in 3/4, and you also have Seersucker. I'm pretty sure that's 3/4.
It's like I think it's like it's 3/4 or 6/8.
I was gonna say it might have been 6/8.
Kind of like a dun 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 dun. Yeah. So it's in 3 there. Yeah.
I was listening to that. I was like, wait, 6/8 or 3/4, but like, yeah, because I know there's certain music heads that will slice your neck for that. But
listen, I'm not that guy. I will never be that guy. I pride myself on being a musician who's never like. I want to be a musician of the people. Like, I never want to be the guy who's like, no, that amp tone is wrong. Like, I don't want to do that. That's what I'm about. I'm really about, and like, I've never been like a gearhead like that or like a music theory, snob like that. Like, I think all that stuff is really important, and I definitely wouldn't downplay it. But it's never been like, I'm never gonna call you up and be like, no, you got that wrong. Like, it's just that's not my game.
So wait, what happens when you're going into one of those songs? Is it a melody or is it a chord progression that happens to be in 3/4 or 6/8? and then you work from there? Or do you go into the studio saying, hey, today I want to push boundaries and make a song in 6/8 and have it sound so, appealing to the general public?
I think a lot of that comes from when I'm writing the song and deciding, like, when I'm playing the chords. Like, oftentimes I'll sit down and you start to kind of warm up and you play around a little bit and noodle, and then you kind of fall into these chords that you like or the sound that you like. And then it's like I'll play it in multiple time signatures sometimes just to see how I feel. That kind of goes in with that rhythmic element I was talking about earlier about placing lyrics and stuff. As I start to put lyrics kind of on the page and lock them into verses and choruses and whatever, it helps. If I know rhythmically what I'm looking for, it might dictate, oh, I really should make this into like a waltzy 3/4 piece, or this really should be a 4/4 piece and kind of just straight on the money, like, or maybe it needs to be longer or slower or faster or whatever. Like, so that often comes in the writing element. And then when I go to record, I kind of already know, well, I know the time signature is this, I know the BPM of the song is this, so like it needs to be this fast. And then if we make changes, it's because we sat there as a collaborative element and said, oh, we can do better, and here's why, and looked at it. Oh, well, we should raise the BPM to 130 beats per minute, or well, this would feel better if we took the chorus and changed the time signature there. But for the most part, it's all kind of done before I even get to the studio, which is helpful,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were talking about previously how like you grew up you started off as a drummer, and that's really showing in your music. Just
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, like the way you're able to just maintain rhythm and driven by rhythm. So, I mean, what's next for you in terms of the new singles and the album? Do you think you're going to take a stronger hold, leading towards that indie folk side, or do you want William to take a stronger hold on that pop element that he's adding, or are you hoping just you guys are going to figure out how to meet in that middle?
Totally. I think it's kind of a combination of the meeting in the middle. Like, I think as I've played these songs and gotten more involved in my career, I think there's kind of two camps. There's people who really like the pop stuff and people who really like the folk stuff. And I love this artist named Lucy Rose. She's from England, and she did a folksy record first, and then later in her career she did this like really pop heavy, like dancey record. And then she was like, oh no, I realized like I left all these fans behind that like all this folkier stuff. And so I thought about that a lot. And kind of when I write music and I go to record, I try to record, like, if I do like a poppy song, I always like record a folkier one, just because I don't ever, and I also never want to feel like locked in like to a genre. Like, I never want to be like, just like, oh wow, this guy's like electronic artist, or this guy just is this. Like, I kind of want to do a little bit of a lot of things, have my finger in kind of many different pies. And so the plan, as far as releasing the next material that's coming out in this album, or even what we do in the future in 2022 or whatever, is to blend that kind of folk and pop mixture, and have stuff that's slower and more moody and stuff that's more upbeat and kind of poppy and interesting and bouncy.
Yeah, I mean, it all really does come together so nicely. I mean, you like there's that, like, every song is a little bit different to it, because you have songs like Willow Tree that really have that somber, like, just ethereal vibe to it, and then you have songs like Be With You, your latest release. I mean, I'm excited to see how that blends on the album. And as far as album rollout, you've been releasing a lot of singles, and you have more coming out.
Yeah. I've been trying to follow the Spotify rules or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, releasing a single every month or 6 weeks or so, and kind of, that's been really cool to do. Just, I think I've seen a lot of growth that way, and a lot of, even more than that, just there's a lot of engagement from people, and a lot of the positive response. And I also feel too, kind of to the last point, like, if I didn't get somebody with the song before, maybe I'll hit them this time and they'll really love it. And to me, like, that's also important, because I really want to make sure every fan feels like they're getting a little piece of something they really want out of it, whether that's, whether it's like like I said, a slower song or a more upbeat thing, and like trying to gauge that has been really important. And then this Friday, I have a song coming out called Easy To with Molly Parton, which is like kind of a perfect blending Americana sound with this pop sound, like coming off of Be With You, which came out in May, which is just like a pure summer top down cruiser, really pop and just easy going. This is a little bit more, not folksy, but I guess Americana driven wise. So it just touching on all these little genres that kind of all are like in a huge Venn diagram with each other. If I think about like a Venn diagram, everything's kind of linked in, just to bring it all together with like this next song coming out.
Yeah, and you're saying this one's more Americana, and listening to Molly Parton's music, I wouldn't necessarily directly go to Americana. So I want to know what contribute, like what have her contributions done to, you know, your sound going forward. I mean, or at least in this next single. I mean, do you guys both come together and decide Americana is the route for you, or was this something natural between the two of you?
Uh, First of all, I'm just lucky that she wanted to be on the song. I honestly she's such a sweet girl. She's really, really awesome. And I guess the kind of the culmination of what happened there was I had recorded the song already in the studio, and I recorded it with William, who I mentioned earlier. And I just was like, I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to do a featured track. All the songs I put out so far are all this Stephen Babcock, and There You Go. And I just was like, I want to get a female voice in here that's like fresh and somebody that I know. And I've known Molly for a little while. Though I'm in Buffalo, she's in Nashville. But when I've gone to Nashville, and I go pretty regularly to do co-writes or to meet with people or play shows or whatever. And I sat down and I talked to her, and she was really, really helpful and just kind of giving some great advice about careers and music in general and stuff. And over the end of the pandemic, or COVID quarantine stuff, I reached out and was just like, hey, I have this song. It's called Easy To, and I'd love to have you sing on it if you'd be into it. And she was like, totally, let's do it. And so a lot of her music initially has had that like Nashville Americana sound. She's like originally from Georgia, and has this kind of like, because she lives in Nashville, she has this very like that Americana country-ish sound. But the song, when we finished it, was way more Americana meets pop than might traditionally be Americana. And I've tried to step away from just being pure like Americana pedal steel guitars and string. Like I just wanted to do something. I wanted my own music to sound kind of a step away from that, but also still have some reminiscence of that. So she came in, and I think what she added was just like a sweet layer that just really makes the song rise above what it already was. And just gives it a tone and a character that obviously I, as having a male voice, just could never add. And she just has such a lovely singing voice. Like all of her music is so good. And I just was like overwhelmed and so joyous to have her a part of it. Her music, some of her music is poppy, some of it's Americana. I also take a lot of inspiration from her stylistically, because she also is never really locked into just one or just the other thing. She's kind of done all different stuff. And I love that. So I'm sorry to be so long-winded. What has she added? She added like a really great tone and a really great vibe that was not there without her. And that I think really helped make the song what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like you're working with artists that have a similar motive to you, as you, to, you know, take many things and breed something new with it. Because, you know, when you're like, you keep on mentioning, when you bring all these things together, that's what pushes things forward. You're not
Yeah.
exactly in one pocket or another. You're in all pockets, and that's
Totally.
what's gonna help, you know, branch out and appeal to all sorts of people. And with Molly, with Will, you said you're going to Nashville, and it's in your bio that you're from both Buffalo and Nashville, and then you're working with Will in North Carolina, and also in certain songs you mentioned leaving Brooklyn for that East Side bullshit. I think that
yeah.
So it seems like you're pretty well traveled. I mean, where are you staying? Where do you plan on going? And I guess what's next for you in terms of traveling?
Originally I'm from upstate New York, and then I spent the last 6 years before 2020, so that's like 2013 to 2020. I was living in New York City for a while. It's actually where I ended up meeting my fiance and everything, and kind of really tied a bow on that. And then I moved back to upstate New York. Now I live in Buffalo, and as far as I know, I'm staying here for the moment. I still am really involved in the Southeast, particularly in Nashville, but I also tour a lot in the Carolinas, in Georgia, and just kind of, I have friends in West Virginia, so I'm there a lot, over kind of west towards Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, that area. But as far as I know right now, it's sticking in Buffalo. But if the right thing comes up, and maybe it will, I'd like to be even more involved in Nashville. It's kind of one of those things I debate all the time, is like, when am I going to finally make the full-time move to Nashville? But I'm kind of all over the place, and I kind of like that. I think there's another songwriter I really love named Donovan Woods, who's actually based out of Toronto, which is right near Buffalo. But he kind of goes back and forth between Toronto and Nashville. And I kind of love that. Well, I don't know if it's practical or not, but I love that. And so I try to do a little bit of that kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, for someone like you, I'm sure that's right up your alley. Now I'm about to ask you a question that's probably going to be your favorite one to answer. Being so well traveled, what have been some of your favorite regional beers?
Regional beers. Oh man, the beer scene up here is really good. There's a lot of it's. I mean, I've lived in New York, and obviously there's like a thousand breweries there. But there's this really great brewery that's actually from New York, and they opened an outpost here in like near Buffalo, in like Rochester area. It's called Other Half, and they make phenomenal beer. I love that, and then because I can also get it in New York City as well. And then there's this brewery in Nashville called Yazoo, which is like just I feel like it's been there forever, and everyone in town knows about it. And it's like weird. Like they make this a couple of these beers. There's one called the Gerst, Gerst, I think it is, and it's so good. And every time I go to Nashville, I drink like a million of them. But you can't get it anywhere else but like in that area. I tried to get it and bring every time I go, I have to like drive it back up to my house because I can never get it anywhere but there. So those are probably my two favorite like brewery locations, like Nashville and up here. But I mean, the best part about traveling, like I remember I would go to Asheville every now and again, and there's like 1,000 breweries in Asheville, North Carolina. My buddy lives in Winston-Salem, William, and there's a lot of breweries there. Like I think Wise Man is there. A lot of cool stuff. Like I could go on for days about that.
Oh,
You know,
I get it, man. When you're passionate about something, it's all you want to talk about. I
yeah,
mean, like for me, it's like my English could sometimes be decent, but then when I'm talking about music, it's like I know every adjective there is to say. So,
sure,
but
sure.
I noticed the same thing with you and beer when watching your beer reviews on your Instagram, and I gotta ask,
Yeah.
one adjective that came up a lot is piney. What makes a beer piney?
It's kind of that's a great question. It's like a hop. So I think with hops and with beer, I the classic breakdown in like an IPA or a double IPA or whatever, when something's really hoppy, is it can really be citrusy, like orange juice, grapefruit, lemony even, or it can be piney. And piney is almost like this, like nutty isn't the right word. It's almost like a spicy kind of like bitter note that it almost feels like if you were to, it's like almost like eating something that smells like pine trees or something, or has like a herbal, it's almost herbaceous, but not like herbal, like classic herbs. It's like, it's very like, it's almost, it's a beer that's really like almost woodsy is the way I would describe it. Woodsy and kind of more bitter, because a lot of IPAs either go one or the other. And like traditionally, like West Coast IPAs tend to be more piney, and New England IPAs tend to be more citrus and juicy. And so, but I mean, and then there's blending of all those styles. So piney is something that, yeah, it's like woodsy, a little bitter, maybe a pinch spicy. It's kind of a nuanced. Yeah, if you tasted it, you go, that's what it is. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
So like, can you compare it to like a standard grocery store beer that you'd find pretty much anywhere? Are any of those piney?
No.
No. All right.
I think about like a Miller Lite or like a Bud Light or something. It's like, yeah, no, those are like the opposite of piney. Those are like water. Those are like, like Poland Springs is giving them a run for their money.
All right. Yeah. I got you. I mean, while we're on the conversation, I got to ask about these beer trends. Like Harpoon out of Massachusetts just did a collaboration with another Massachusetts brand, Dunkin' Donuts, to make Dunkin' Donuts flavored IPAs. Do you get a chance to get your hands on those? And what are your thoughts on those trends?
I've had they make, I think, a Dunkin' Donuts like coffee porter that was pretty good. I like the brewery. I've been to Harpoon Brewery. My cousin is originally from the Boston area, so I would go a lot to visit him. And when we were older, we would go to the Harpoon Brewery because they have like really cool pretzels and it's a cool bar area and whatever. And I've had the coffee. I think it's a coffee porter with Dunkin' Donuts. That was pretty good. But if I don't even know that they made a Dunkin' Donuts IPA. If that's a thing, I don't know if I want to try it. I don't know. I might shy away from that one.
I'm pretty sure it was just the coffee one, and they also did jelly donut as well as Boston cream.
Okay, I haven't tried those. I've just had like the classic one. But I mean, I'm always down to try. I mean, you saw my beer reviews, which kind of got me through the pandemic. There's just something to do that was creative outside of just making music and talking about music. But I'm always down to try anything. I can't guarantee that I'll like it, but I'll
give an honest
try.
review on your Instagram.
Yes, I try to be as honest as I can. Sometimes I think that probably drives people crazy, but I just feel like there was a time when I was doing that in quarantine where people would be like, what do I go get? I'm at the grocery store. What do I have to buy? Like, what do I do? And the same with music. Like, I want to make sure I'm making good music and that people feel like if I say this is really good, that they can believe that. It's the same with anything in my life. If I'm doing something and I believe it, I want people to believe it too. And if I have a really good beer, I want to tell the world. And if I have something that's really not great, I don't want people to say, oh, he reviewed this and said it was good, and then it actually was terrible and we didn't like it. So I always try to be as honest as I can, with anything in life, but especially with that. Nothing's worse than wasting $20 on a 4-pack and you bring it home and you're like, what was I doing? It's the worst.
Absolutely great mentality to have. And I mean, that's a great quarantine activity to have. I know we all had those quarantine activities, and now that we're, leaving the tail end of the pandemic, we're just getting those last glimpses of pandemic songs, the songs that were made during quarantine. And I know a lot of, young artists had a lot of those songs that really reflected their time in quarantine. Can you talk to me about some of the songs you have released or are planning on releasing that, really came out of the peak of quarantine?
I guess honestly, it's everything that I've released so far came out of quarantine. Like I think maybe 1 or 2 songs that I wrote before quarantine. I think Bukowski I wrote just before everyone went into quarantine. But I everything that we recorded, we started recording in April of 2020. So right after like everything was shut down and like closed off and whatever. And we've been recording kind of on and off since then. So for me, all the singles that have come out are like, for me, really remind me of quarantine because it was all done in this very tight bubble. And honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think we can obviously replicate it and do recording again and have it be great. But I think, and I'd love to, I feel like I talk to William about this all the time because he's the one who recorded them with me. But it kind of created a very specific experience that I don't know if we would be able to replicate without doing that. We might have been just too busy, or life would have just kind of carried us away. And so it was really great to be able to sit down with him in quarantine and, masked up, obviously we were testing everything, so we were all gravy, but it was like we sat down and made these songs together in a time when it was all we could really do. So we put our heart and soul into it, and that was really cool. And so these songs are still coming out, that they were all recorded during the pandemic, but it's cool to see them now in like a non-pandemic world where like life is just kind of zooming up and looking so much different, so much better,
Yeah, and to take those songs that you recorded in such an intimate space and perform them so publicly on your upcoming tour, I want to know, looking to the future, what do you think that'll be like for you?
Well, I think for me, for any artist I know, the idea right now is just, that's not everybody, but for the most part, anybody I know is like, let's get on the road, let's play shows, man, I miss this, I just want, and like before quarantine, 2020 was my biggest year of touring to date. Like I had somewhere between 60 and 80 shows lined up or potentially lined up that were like on the back burner in the summer too, that all just got canceled. So when everything got lifted, it was like, how do I just book a tour? What do I got to do? Like, I'll play a local bar, gigs where I would be like, I don't know if I want to do that. It's like, is it just 3 hours for some cover? Like, I was like, whatever, let's just do it. Let's just play. All during quarantine, I've been doing these Instagram live streams every Tuesday and Thursday for the most part. And it's been really rewarding because it's kind of like being able to play live shows without actually being in a live environment. And so for me right now, I've been trying to tell people, like if you're able to come to the show, but let's say you live in Brazil and I'm playing in Buffalo, it's obviously not going to work. So I've been trying to connect those things together. So the future for me is really like, how do I play live shows? I'm probably going to stream a lot of my live shows now, no matter what kind of show it is, either via Instagram or I've been really into Twitch and like Discord servers and stuff like that, which has been really cool. Trying to stream that way. Just getting everybody kind of involved, and the new world for me looks like bringing digital and the real life together even tighter, right? I think we all have to, because the digital stuff is never going to go away. I think we're already, it's like people who said TikTok was going to go away and it just never did. It's like we're there now. You know what I mean? It's same with digital life linking up with the real life. It's all together. For me, it's just touring as many real dates, real life around the country shows as I can, and bringing those people who don't necessarily live in the US but became fans of mine during quarantine, bringing them into the shows somehow, whether that's live streaming, whether that's sending them photos and videos from the show, like doing whatever we can to blend those two worlds.
Yeah, I mean, you also have been involved with a Traklife home sessions, which is pretty much just taking that, and running with it. That concept of remote performances. Is there a specific strategy that you plan to pursue with, like, if this becomes something that's more normalized, considering the popularity at home concerts or virtual shows? Do you plan on pursuing those virtual shows in a different way that you would your live shows?
I think I'm always going to try to keep doing the weekly the bi-weekly streams, or whatever, the twice a week streams. I'm going to try to keep doing that as long as I can for, anyone that wants to keep watching them. I think more and more what's probably going to happen is people are just going to want to come to live shows, like real in life shows. So those might taper off, but for the time being, like, my thing is just to keep those engaged and keep those happening. And I have no intention of, like, just shutting those off. Like, it's really important to me to keep those fans engaged and make sure people don't feel like left out in the dust just because I'm no longer just penned in my house and can't leave. But I think that's, for me, I've been trying to do more digitally than I probably would have ever done had this not happened. I've tried to do more live streaming and more connecting with fans digitally than I would have. Usually I would just go on the road and say, come see me on the road, and do that. And you talk to people on Instagram, you talk to people on Facebook or whatever, and then it was like, really, oh, come to the show, like, as I'll be here. Now it's both. Now it's like, there are people who I know just can't see me regularly. So I really want to make sure that they don't feel left out in the cold. And then at the same time, keeping people who live in, North Carolina, who I will probably see in the next couple of months. I want to make sure that they feel like they could come out and shake my hand and talk to me and maybe get a t-shirt and, like, all that stuff. So both are still simultaneously important to me, for sure.
Are there any particular venues or locations that you're eager to go to on your tour?
Right now, I think we're locked in with my buddy is in this band called Ona. His name is Brad Goodall, and he's releasing a solo project. And we've locked in a few shows in October so far. And one of them is at this place called Ace of Cups, which is in Columbus. It's owned by the guys. I believe it's owned by the guys, or one of the guys is a friend or something. But there's some relation to the band Camp. And that's really cool. And I'm really excited to go play that venue. It's a really, really cool spot that I've never seen before. But they've been having really great shows. And I think the best part about being a musician is playing venues in really great rooms. And so that's one I really can't wait to play. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, I used to live in New York City. I don't anymore, but I go there often too. And I'm playing at Rockwood Music Hall again, which is a venue that I cut my teeth at for the longest time while I was living in New York. So I cannot wait to go back. I'm going back there in August. And then right following that, the next day, I'm going to play Music Fest over in Pennsylvania, which is a festival that I've kind of been doing a lot lately. That's been really, really great and really engaging. People are, like, right up in front of you on the stage, and you can really start to meet people. So it's kind of like back to normal. But I think those probably 3 shows are, like, right now are locked in and good to go. And I'm, like, super stoked on those 3 for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And that New York show seems kind of poetic, going back to a place like that, but you're going from something so intimate to also venues like music festivals. Yeah, I mean, it's also a great opportunity to, reach out to new fans. Who do you like? What are some fan bases or some areas that you're trying to reach out to that, you haven't maybe been exposed to yet? Some maybe, I guess what I want to ask is, what are the fan bases that you're hoping to appeal to?
I'm really just hoping to appeal to fan bases of similar artists of mine, and also I'm hoping to appeal to fan bases that actually, this is kind of maybe a weird way to answer this, but, like, appealing to fan bases of people that already like my music, to kind of reignite that again. I think a big concern for a lot of artists, certainly myself, is, like, when I finally go back on the road, which is starting to happen, are those fans still going to be there? Are people still going to come to shows? Are people going to remember what it was like to see me play live and enjoy that and want to be a part of that? And so, as much for me, it's kind of twofold. It's certainly my hope is to start to play more shows with other bands that I like and open for them, or share a bill with them, and touch into that kind of fan group and bring those things together. But also, I'm just hopeful that when I go to New York again, for example, or I go back to Music Fest in Pennsylvania, that people that saw me before come out and go, oh, I remember this guy. I like this. I want to listen to more of this. Oh man, it's so good to see that he's still doing it. You know what I mean? I think the big takeaway was a lot of people that I know who did music kind of were like, I'm just COVID hit. This isn't going to work. I'm done. And the fact that a lot of the friends that I have kind of stuck through it, I think we all feel like, man, I hope when we go back out this time, the people are still there and people that knew us still appreciate what we were doing and are into what we're doing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And also you have to take into consideration that your fan base has grown significantly since you were touring last.
Yeah.
What do you expect from that? I mean, you're saying that you are hopeful that your original fans have held on to you, but what do you expect to see from new walks of life, new areas, new fan bases?
Yeah, I guess I'm just excited for those new fans that have kind of picked up during quarantine after the new releases and everything. My hope is that they just kind of come out and get a chance to finally see what a live show is like. A lot of, especially like these full band shows that I've done in New York City. It always was like a really big treat and a big experience to come and play a show with the band and have people see that. And so my hope is that not only just fans, but also folks in the industry and everybody come out and say like, oh, here's this guy we've heard so much about online. We've seen his numbers. He looks like he's growing. And they come out and see a show, and then they kind of see the whole package. Because for me, as much as touring can always be a grind and is always, this, that, or the other, it's great I love playing live. I really enjoy it. Whether it's acoustic, whether it's full band, whatever. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to see me and interact with me. And you get to kind of like be a part of that experience. And so my hope is that the new fans and old fans take away this kind of, oh, here's the guy. Like, we've seen him online. We know who he is, sort of. But like, now we got a chance to meet him. Now we shook his hand. He told us some dad joke. We got through it. Like that's what I want. I want people to feel connected. And I think the best way to do that is to literally come see me, or I go see you guys wherever you're at.
Absolutely. And also, just after such a long time, I know as an artist, it's got to be hard because you're disconnected from, the involvement and the actual, seeing your fans sing your songs along with you. That's that connectivity that, I guess artists are longing for and, don't really get. And
Totally.
you were saying that, you're performing with your band, and obviously your songs are so fully produced that I don't know if you could play the drums while playing the guitar and also singing at the same time. So talk to me about the people that you're performing with and, if any of their involvement in your production when creating songs.
So the guys I recorded the recent batch of singles and songs and what will become the final album. Those guys all live in Winston-Salem or in Asheville, respectively, North Carolina. That's William Hinson, Cole Covington, and Zach Covington. Those guys have been kind of instrumental in making the record happen as far as a producing something in the studio. In New York City, I work with a different band. They're the guys I've also recorded my older songs with. It's Cody Ron on drums, Jeff McLaughlin on guitar, Alex Manier on bass, Andrew Miramonte on keys, and then Jacqueline Rostikoff singing some female vocals in the background. The bands are different only because just when we were recording during the pandemic, I couldn't bring a band to North Carolina. It was like everyone locked in. Yeah. And also it was just for me, it was just nice to do something new and different as well. Just work with different people is always good. But the band that I have in New York is still the band that I have in New York. Those are my guys. I love them. They're like brothers to me and sister to me. And so they're super important, and they're totally definitive as part of the live sound. And that's why, for me, the more that I can now also bring them on the road, which this summer or fall and summer, it's mostly acoustic just because it's easy to tour that way. But the more that I tour and get bigger shows, and hopefully as the releases come out, there's chances to open for bigger acts and actually bring a whole band out on the road, that they come on the road with me and be a part of it. That's been a huge kind of next step for us and for me, and to try to make that happen and take that tour outside of just New York and kind of the surrounding areas, but also out into the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like you got a lot of aspirations to get out there and stuff. And your music is also you hear the influence of or just the role that they play, your band members, while it's sounding so reflective of you and your sound and your desire and your songwriting.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what's coming next. I'm eager to hear what's coming next. You have single after single coming out, and then inevitably an album. What songs have we heard that are going to make it on the album, and what have you been talk to me about what you have been saving for the album?
So everything that you've heard so far on Spotify, that's kind of everything that's got like this, the branding is that black and white covers with like a little photo in the center. Those are all part of the same kind of collection of songs. Pretty much by the time the album comes out, everything but one song will have been released, I should say. So in other words, there's another single that comes out on June 25th called Easy To with Molly Parton, which we talked about. There's another song that's coming out in July. It's called Truth of the Matter. Then there's the album itself will come out in September, and that's going to include Truth of the Matter, Easy To, all the songs before that, all the way through to Notting Hill, which is the first song I put out in quarantine. And then on the album, there'll be one more bonus track. So a total of 9 songs all together will be on this album. The album is called Monroe, and we haven't announced anything crazy with it yet, but we're going to be announcing a lot more.
You heard it here first.
Yes, you heard it here first. But we are announcing more about that soon as the kind of summer rolls on. But really, really excited for that to come out, and we've got a lot of plans as far as touring after that comes out in October, and working on new stuff too. So really exciting. Really, really. I haven't put out an album in a long time. I put out some singles and I put out an EP, but an album I haven't done, and I literally don't even remember how many years. It's got to be at least 4 or 5 years since I put an album out. So, or maybe even more than that. So I'm excited to do that, and really looking forward to it. This is kind of the most cohesive grouping of songs I've had in a long time. And it's just really exciting to put a collection together. And more importantly, it's like what's kind of been maybe not intended, but certainly a fun consequence of putting out single after single is like you get to see people react and see that they like it as it's gone along. So when the album does drop, it's like a little bit like, well, you're probably going to like it because it's pretty much all these songs you've already heard, and then there's a couple extras on there. So hopefully you'll love the collection of everything all lined up in the right way,
Yeah, I want to hear more about this. Like you have it. What binds these songs together is that you've made them all in this stretch of time, but at the same time you're releasing them single after single. So what separates the album as itself from being a bunch of singles collected together? As opposed to that, it being an album, one cohesive piece of music.
I think what brings them all together is kind of the way that we recorded them. Sonically, they're very similar. I think I think it's maybe hard to see offhand if you're just listening to single after single after single in my like Spotify account or my Apple Music account. But if you listen to them all together in like one cohesive blend, I think they've all been mixed and mastered by the same people. Everything's all like very lined up, right? And all recorded pretty much in the same time frame. So everything's really neat. And when they're all like locked in together like a little sandwich, you'll see like the flow. It really works well. And there's, the other thing too is just really important with releasing the songs, just like it will be in the album track list, is that ebb and flow of how they fly through the track listing. We've released them in a certain way. We're going to place them in the track list a certain way so that everything kind of flows right. And that's why the singles themselves may seem just like singles. Oh, these are just like single songs you put out. These are just whatever. But then when they're all together, I think it will come together and people will be like, there's the picture. There's the whole final image.
I mean, it's such an interesting way to pursue an album rollout, and it's really reflective of your innovative style. And I know we talked about, working with Spotify to, be incorporated in their algorithm. So you're really using that to your advantage. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that. Are these songs being released in a specific, the order that they're being released in? Is it the order they've been recorded, or the order you want to arrange them on the album, or is it a different order on the album?
For the most part, they've been released. They're not released in a kind of recording order. Like we didn't record Notting Hill, which is the first song we released. We didn't record that first. It's just one of those songs that we just wanted to put out first. Mm-hmm. I think because and I really mean this, like we sat down, I think, and we recorded 7 songs in, William would be able to tell you better. I think it was 4 days that we did it, which was pretty nutty when I think about it now, but we just kind of sat down and just cranked through a bunch of music. And then, there's tweaking of it after, but like the body of the songs, all of them were pretty much done within 7 of them were done in like 4 days. So, long story short, the order that they're out, the track list may be like that. I haven't decided yet if I want to make the track list the way they literally came out, over the months, or if I want to change it up. I'm still undecided on that, but the plan is to likely, put them in either that order or just a slightly tweaked order from when they originally landed. And then we'll either end with the brand new song, or we'll put the brand new song somewhere like in the middle of the track listing.
Also in like, talking to you directly about this, it's getting me more amped up for your music, and then just seeing such a clear timeline of your progress. And songs like Notting Hill, which was the first release, the one thing that binds these songs together is the impressive songwriting. Talk to me about that metaphor of the Notting Hill,
Sure.
And also please feel free to go on into other metaphors that are used in your songs, because I see there's a lot.
I think with Notting Hill, I think a lot of the songs have a particular emphasis on time and place. I think that's really important, especially obviously when you're storytelling. That's really important for songs like that. Notting Hill is really funny in the sense of, I wrote that song like right as quarantine started. I was supposed to get married during quarantine. There's a couple songs on the record that are about this topic. Be With You is one of them, and Notting Hill is the other, where I was supposed to get married during quarantine, and it obviously didn't happen. It was supposed to be in the summer of 2020. And long story short, my fiance was really beat up about it and really sad, obviously. So was I. And so I wrote these songs as a way to kind of like cheer her up. I remember sitting at the kitchen table and just kind of like writing these songs and trying to, find ways to say like, I care about you and this is important, and, don't be sad. Like we're going to figure a way through this. And Notting Hill, it's one of our favorite movies. And she also gets a lot, which it used to always bother her. It was like an inside joke too, that she looks kind of like Julia Roberts, especially when she was like a little bit younger, because her hair was like a little bit lighter. Now it's like a lot more dark brown, but it used to be like a really light brown. And people would be like, "Oh, you kind of look like Julia Roberts. Like, are you related to Julia Roberts?" And so there's a line in there where it's like, I know you want to live like Notting Hill, but Julia, I can't sit still. It's kind of just a reference to her and like that, like poking fun at that Julia nickname or, lookalike, and just like loving the movie Notting Hill and just kind of being just poking at what is a great romantic comedy. And then I think other metaphors, like Bukowski is a real reference to somebody I used to know, who, when I was like seeing them, they were reading Bukowski novels at the same time that I was reading Bukowski, and Bukowski is my favorite author. And so I just wanted some way to incorporate the name Bukowski. I just thought it was such a cool name, and like nobody's doing that. And I just was like, this would be a cool title for a song. And I think what's really funny is about like Nashville in general, like people in Nashville always sit down at a co-write and they're like, what titles you got? Well, you come in there, we got like our phone out and they're like, oh man, I wrote down all these song titles. And I never liked writing a song from that way. Like for me, it was much more about a mood. It's much more about a style, or like what I was trying to say, instead of just like, oh, I have a song called, Crying in My Beer. Like, let's write a song. I didn't want to do it like that. But I just knew this was the one instance where I sat down and said, wow, I really want a song called Bukowski. Like, how do I work backward from that? And then I started thinking about all these stories and all these things that happened. And that's kind of where that came from.
That was one of the biggest questions I wanted to ask you, specifically about Bukowski, was because I wanted to know, was that means of therapy for you, or was it just like, okay, we're starting here with, I really wasn't expecting you started with the title and to go into that direction. I thought, from listening to that song, I thought it was like, this was your outlet, your means of therapy.
Well, it was a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, so, and that's the fun part about songwriting, right? You like, it's literally, you could be chugging down one path and all of a sudden you're like, and you're going this other direction, and it's like whoosh and you're off. And for me, it started with that, and I just thought that was cool. And I had wanted for a long time to write a song with that name in it, and to pay, because I always feel like, I was watching an interview with like Hozier, and there's other artists. I think I love the band Dawes. So the lead singer of Dawes, Taylor Goldsmith, always talks about it. And they're like, oh, I was reading this book and I just took such inspiration. And I was like, man, I feel like I never really read. I mean, I like to read, but not that much. And I was like, man, I never really like reference literary stuff. I wish I could do that. And then I was like, man, it'd be so cool to reference Bukowski. It's like the one guy outside of maybe J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, where I've read like all of the Bukowski books. I've read pretty much every book that he has outside of his like poetry, but all of his novels I've read. And I loved them. And I used to read them when I was in New York, and I'd be on the train and I'd be reading them. And I just loved them. They were so good. And I was just like, man, I'd love to incorporate this, but like Bukowski, I don't know if you know anything about Charles Bukowski, but he's basically like just this crazy drunk person in LA in like the 40s to the 80s, and he was just like nutty. And I was like, I don't really have like a life like that. I can't really write about his life. So I just kind of tied it into that story that actually happened with that girl that I knew who used to read Bukowski. And when I first saw her, she was like, we were talking about books. I don't, whatever it is you do on a first date, and you're sitting there with your fucking drinks and you're like milling it over. And like, what do you do? How do you like this? Whatever. And then I was like, what do you like to read? And she was like, well, I like to read Bukowski. And it was like this whole thing. And there's like that song is not, I couldn't sit here and say, oh, that was about one person, as much as that would sound like super romantic and kind of like heartbreaking or whatever, heartwarming. But it is an amalgamation of different people that I've known or dated or stories I've been told. And so it was an element of therapy, but it also was like working from this kind of initially it was working from a very base level, like how do we put this writer's name into the song?
Absolutely relieving for your fiance, I'm sure, that it wasn't about one particular person.
No, it wasn't. And that's the thing. My buddy, I have a really good friend named Daryl Ron, who's another great songwriter, singer-songwriter. And he and I always talk about how like we can write, as a songwriter, you want to keep writing these songs that are like very emotive, right? And that are real, right? They're about like your real life, and they're not necessarily just made up. But sometimes you kind of, as a good songwriter can make up a story and make something feel real, even if it's not totally real. Because as a fan and as a listener, you like you said, like you pulled your own experience from that, or you made you think what it was about, and it's like about creating something that's relatable, not necessarily that's just about my life. Though I always put a little bit of me in every song that I do, because that's how you make it your song. Not every element is always like this is where it's at, and sometimes those feelings like Bukowski of wanting someone back aren't always how I feel right now, but I did feel that way at that time a couple of years ago, and then I wrote the song later when I had a better grasp on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, empathizing with like, my perspective of like, viewing that and relating to it. I also like understanding your perspective, like how you were talking about, you start with one direction to go somewhere else, but, you probably, I'm sure you probably feel like everything that you need to say inevitably gets said when you submit to the natural direction of how you're writing. So,
yeah. The things that you need to say and like what a song really needs, they always kind of seem to come out in the wash, right? Like, it's like sometimes you'll sit down and you want to write a song and then it takes you in the other direction. Like that's usually because the song is trying in a weird, like metaphysical way, maybe, I don't know, whatever it is, kind of like, it's not like I'm over here rubbing crystals or something, but it's like,
it's always something that you can understand when you've experienced that, though. I've noticed.
What?
That's something that you can only understand once you've experienced, though. That's a feeling
of the song
of writing something and then having what needs to be said just come out and just submitting to the direction.
Totally. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing. Like sometimes you just like let the song take you there. And what's always funny to me too, is people always say like with songs like that are really sad. They're always like, wow, well, you must've been like in a real way. And it's usually like, I'm usually like over the moon. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm really happy. Usually when I'm writing these songs, I'm like drinking a coffee in the morning. I'm like, oh, I'm going to write. Like I'm never usually writing a song when I'm really like emotive or in an emotional space. I know there's songwriters who like love to write, like something crazy might happen and they come home and they write out a song and they're like, oh, this is awesome. And I've never really been that way. Like I always kind of need to be like right in the middle. Like I can't be too high or too low. I gotta be like right here, like a buoy in the water. And then I just that's when all the songs come out. Like, and I can look at my experiences in a very neutral way. And then I can lean really happy or really sad or really happy or whatever. I can kind of play with it in that realm once I've like locked that thought in. Cause like when I'm in like a middle ground, I'm just feeling good and living life and whatever, then I can really tap into those moments with a clear perspective, whether they're positive or negative.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can't stress this enough. I'm really excited to see where that takes you, and all this stuff takes you. Like you were talking about, your favorite artists, reading some books and making songs inspired by those authors. And you have Bukowski. I mean, I'm reading Perfume by Patrick Susskind because Kurt Cobain made a song "Scentless Apprentice" about it. So I hope to see one day that people are reading Bukowski because of you. And I know I hope so. I have some good book recommendations now that I can take with that.
Absolutely. Goski is super good. You should definitely check him out if you haven't.
Absolutely. I for sure will. I also just, I want to close this up by just talking some more about what to expect Friday. We have a lot of things to expect from you, but just one Friday, we got the Americano flair to it. We got Molly Parton on it. Yeah, talk to me about just what you are excited for about this release.
I'm really excited for it just because I think it's actually the first song I've ever done that actually features another artist on it. So that to me is a big experience, and it's really important for me to be able to share the song in a way that really highlights not just me, but somebody else. And I really proud that I was able to do that, and have Molly be a part of it. So I didn't want to just have anybody. I reached out to a very select few group of artists, and I wanted it to be a different. I didn't want it to be like a dude's voice either. I wanted a female voice in the song to give it a different character and to give the story some flow. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited just because I think it's also it's kind of hitting. We're kind of right at this kind of final edge, this peak of all the songs that we've been putting out and all this build up. And so I'm just excited for fans to see it, and to hear it and to kind of keep riding this wave. I don't know if we touched on it a little bit earlier, but like I've had the most monthly listeners I've ever had, most followers on social media I've ever had. Like there's a lot of eyes on it now. And there can always be more. And I think my hope is that this comes out and people are like, wow, I really know this guy. Like he's really been putting this out, really, really growing his brand. And I'm really excited for that. So that's huge. And that's big for me. And I think the last thing, I guess, would just be that my hope is that the fans that have been along for the whole journey, like from way back, all 8-9 years ago, or recently, like from the pandemic forward, like that they feel like really fulfilled and really excited. I think what jazzes me up more than anything is when somebody sends me a DM or comments on a post and is like, wow, I can't wait. I pre-saved the song. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see you in a live stream. I can't wait to see you live at a show. So when I put these songs out, if those people are like excited for that, which it seems like they are, that's what gets me going. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And that's why I'm excited for it as well.
I love to see just the commitment to your existing fan base rather than going right after how do I grow. Your biggest concern is how do I maintain this loyalty between me and my fans.
Totally. Yeah, I just to that end, just really quick, I just feel very grateful. You know what I mean? Like I think I've worked so long and so hard at being a musician and had no real interest or nobody really cared. And to have people start to really care, like the whole thing I always try to preach to anyone who follows me is that just like, I'm glad you're here. I'm so over the moon that you walked in the door, came inside and checked it out. I'm so if anyone watching this interview or anyone who checks it out or checks out my music or whatever, if they don't know me or they know me, just I'm grateful that they're even a part of it. I'm just grateful that they're just there. That's the coolest thing to me in the world.
Well, as a fan, I'm happy to be here and just to get to talk to you. It's been incredible. I'm really excited to see what you have going forward. So we've got Easy 2 coming out Friday. We have a bunch of new singles that coming out in the months to come and an inevitable album, which we can expect around the fall.
September 2021.
September 2021 and a tour following. Stephen Babcock, any last things, any last regards to send to your fans?
Thanks for listening. Check out Easy 2 on Friday, June 25th. Check out StephenBabcockmusic.com or at StephenBMusic on Instagram. I'll see you guys on Spotify and Apple Music real soon. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you.
Stephen, thank you. Take care.